Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands as he stepped back from the navigation console, and the holographic display flickered to life with stable readings for the first time in 3 days, and the other engineers in the room let out a collective sigh of relief because the station had been drifting dangerously close to the asteroid field without proper guidance systems. He was only 24 years old, but already had a reputation across Meridian 7 Station as the human who could fix anything, and that reputation had brought him to the attention of someone he never expected to meet. Commander Velsara of the Zenthari fleet stood in the doorway, and her blue-silver skin seemed to glow under the station lights, and her crystalline eyes watched him with an expression that mixed curiosity with something that looked like disapproval. And Jake had seen that look before from the longer-lived species who treated humans like energetic children. She moved forward with grace that came from over a century of military discipline, and her tall frame made Jake feel smaller than his 6 feet of height. And when she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality that all Zenthari possessed. "You are the engineer, Morrison." Jake nodded and tried not to stare because even though he had seen Zenthari before, none of them had been quite like her, and there was something about the way she carried herself that commanded attention. "That is me, and I just got your nav system back online." Velsara examined the console with practiced efficiency, and her long fingers danced across the holographic controls, and she ran 3 different diagnostic tests before she looked back at him. "Impressive, and my own technicians could not solve this problem in 72 hours, yet you managed it." Jake shrugged and felt heat creep up his neck because praise from a Zenthari commander was not something that happened every day. Human engineering is different, and we approach problems from angles that other species might not consider. She tilted her head in that bird-like way that Zenthari had when something puzzled them. "Your species has only been spacefaring for 60 years, yet you act as though you have centuries of experience. We make up for lack of time with enthusiasm." Something flickered in her crystalline eyes, and it might have been amusement, but it vanished so quickly that Jake could not be sure, and she turned back to the console. "I require your assistance with another matter, and the fleet's long-range scanners are producing inconsistent data, and it may be another problem that requires your unconventional thinking." Jake agreed immediately, because working with a Zenthari commander was an opportunity he could not pass up, and over the next 2 weeks he found himself spending more and more time in the Fleet Operations Center, and Velsara was always there overseeing everything with calm authority. They worked well together, and Jake learned that beneath her formal exterior, Velsara had a sharp wit and a deep understanding of spatial mechanics that came from decades of navigation experience, and she seemed surprised that a human could keep up with her complicated explanations. One evening after a particularly long shift, Jake found her standing alone in the observation deck, and the stars stretched out before them in an endless tapestry, and he almost turned away to give her privacy, but she gestured for him to join her. "Your species finds beauty in the void." Jake moved to stand beside her and tried to see the stars the way she might after more than a century of traveling between them. "We find beauty in lots of things, and maybe because we do not have as much time, we notice it." Velsara turned to look at him fully, and her expression was softer than he had ever seen it. "You speak of your short lifespan so casually." Jake met her gaze and felt something shift in the air between them. "We live maybe 90 years if we are lucky, and you Zenthari live 300 or more. But that just means we have to make every moment count." She looked away, and something in her posture suggested conflict. "The Zenthari view humans as children, and your entire civilization is younger than I am. That bothers you. It complicates things." Before Jake could ask what she meant, the station alarms began blaring and red emergency lights flooded the observation deck, and Velsara was moving instantly toward the exit, and Jake followed close behind. The command center was chaos when they arrived, and one of the junior officers was shouting about a coolant leak in the reactor section, and the automatic systems had failed to engage the backup protocols, and they had maybe 20 minutes before the reactor went critical. Velsara began issuing orders with rapid precision, but Jake was already pulling up the reactor schematics on his portable terminal, and he saw the problem immediately. "Commander, I can fix this, but I need to get into the reactor chamber before the radiation Levels get too high. Absolutely not, and the environmental suits cannot protect you adequately. Jake was already moving toward the equipment lockers. Then I go without a full suit and I can handle brief exposure. Zara grabbed his arm and her grip was strong enough to stop him. You will die maybe, but everyone on this station definitely dies if that reactor goes critical. Their eyes locked and Jake saw fear there mixed with something else. And finally she released him. Go, and I am coming with you. They made it to the reactor chamber in 8 minutes and the heat was already intense even through the partial shielding of their suits. And Jake's hands worked quickly to manually override the backup systems, while Zara held the access panel steady, and radiation warnings flashed across their helmet displays. Jake's fingers flew across the manual controls, and he rerouted the coolant flow through the secondary systems and bypassed the corrupted automation protocols, and sweat poured down his face as the temperature continued to climb. The reactor stabilized with 3 minutes to spare, and they stumbled out of the chamber and collapsed against the corridor wall, and medical teams were already rushing toward them with scanning equipment later. In the medical bay after they had been cleared of dangerous radiation exposure, Zara sat on the edge of the examination table and looked at Jake with an expression he could not read. You risked your life without hesitation. Jake managed a weak smile. Someone had to, and I knew I could fix it. Why do humans do this and throw themselves into danger for others? Because life is short, so we might as well make it mean something. Zara was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I have been avoiding you. Jake felt his heart sink. I noticed. You confuse me. Jake Morrison and I have lived 156 years and commanded fleets across a dozen systems, and I have never been confused. What confuses? You and everything about you and your enthusiasm and your reckless bravery and the way you see beauty in things I stopped noticing decades ago. Jake moved closer. Is that a bad thing? Zara looked up at him and her crystalline eyes were bright. You are so young and I am older than you by more than a century and my people would never understand. Jake reached out and gently took her hand. Love does not care about age. She stood abruptly and her hand slipped from his. You cannot possibly understand. What you are saying and human emotions are intense, but they fade quickly. That is not true. It is what all the longer-lived species believe. Jake felt frustration building in his chest. Maybe we feel things more intensely because we have less time, and maybe our emotions mean more because we know they will not last forever. Zara turned away. I will outlive you by 2 centuries, and I will watch you grow old and die while I am still in my prime, and that is not something I can accept. Then don't. Think about the end and think about right now in this moment. She shook her head. I cannot be so careless with my heart. Jake moved to stand in front of her. You Zinthari live 3 times as long as us, but do you feel 3 times as much? And when you look at the stars, do you really see them or are they just background noise after so many years? Zara's expression cracked. That is unfair. It is honest. And I would rather have 30 years of something real than 300 years of nothing. Tears formed in her crystalline eyes, and Jake had read that Zinthari rarely cried. Your species is infuriating. We have been told that before. She laughed, and it was a broken, beautiful sound. I have been fighting this for weeks and trying to maintain proper distance and telling myself all the logical reasons why this cannot work. And then you ran into a reactor chamber to save everyone, and I realized that logic means nothing when I cannot breathe properly until I know you are safe. Jake felt hope surge in his chest. So what do we do? Zara reached up and touched his face with gentle fingers. We try, and I do not know if this can work, but I know that I cannot walk away. Jake covered her hand with his own. I will take every day we get and make it count for both of us. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. Humans are impossible. The best things usually are. 2 months later, Jake stood beside Zara on the bridge of her flagship as they prepared to depart Meridian 7, and the crew had accepted their relationship with varying degrees of surprise, but Zara's reputation commanded respect, and no one questioned her choices openly. Jake had been offered a permanent position as the fleet's chief human consultant, and He had accepted without hesitation because wherever Velsera went, he wanted to be there. She glanced at him from her command chair, and something warm flickered in her expression. Ready, Engineer Morrison. Jake grinned, always commander. As the ship jumped to faster than light speed, Jake thought about all the species in the galaxy who believed humans were too young and too reckless to matter, and maybe they were right. But being young meant seeing everything,